Welcome to a heart-melting love story, where hidden secrets and explosive truths collide in the dazzling glow of high society. Picture a simple woman, tucked away among weathered books, suddenly swept into a family conspiracy that forces her to become the counterfeit bride of a blind millionaire. He believes she's his destined love, but when the veil of deception falls, nothing will ever be the same. This is the journey of Emma Harper, a woman thrust into the role of her twin sister, and William Langley, a wealthy CEO yearning for a genuine connection. With breathtaking plot twists, tears, and a warm, uplifting ending, this tale will make you laugh, cry, and believe in the power of truth. Prepare to immerse yourself in a whirlwind of emotions, and don't forget to drop a comment sharing the city you're watching from and your thoughts. Hit the like button, subscribe to our channel to catch more captivating millionaire love stories, and join us in spreading love across America. Under the soft golden light of a Chicago morning, Emma Harper, 32, stood quietly behind the worn oak counter of Golden Pages bookstore. Towering shelves dusted with the faint patina of memory enveloped her in the gentle scent of old paper and polished wood. This was her sanctuary, a world apart from the stifling pressures of her wealthy yet troubled family in Lake Forest. Each book on the shelves, from rare antique prints to dog-eared romantic novels, whispered stories Emma secretly longed to live, lives of freedom, unbound by expectations. Emma was worlds apart from her twin sister Sophia, a radiant influencer with shimmering blonde hair and a lavish lifestyle followed by thousands on social media. While Sophia sparkled under the flash of high society events, Emma embraced solitude, cherishing conversations with regular customers about classical poetry or the quiet thrill of turning yellowed pages. A faint scar on her chin, nearly invisible, marked a childhood bike accident at 10. A bitter memory when her mother, Vivian Harper, fretted over Sophia's sprained wrist while ignoring Emma's wound. That scar, though subtle, was a constant reminder that she was forever overshadowed by her sister in her family's eyes. The Harper family, with their grand Lake Forest mansion, viewed Emma's bookstore as an outdated relic, a quirky hobby unworthy of their stature. Vivian, with her perfectly styled blonde hair and sharp voice, frequently reminded Emma that this humble shop could never compare to the family's grand ambitions, especially Sophia's upcoming wedding. Sophia was set to marry William Langley, a mysterious millionaire and former tech CEO whose sight was stolen by a car accident 3 years prior. The wedding, dubbed by Vivian as the event of the season, was more than a celebration. It was a symbol of power and wealth, a chance for the Harpers to solidify their place among the elite. Emma ran her hand along the counter, her fingers brushing a rare book she'd recently cataloged, savoring the fragile peace of this small world. For years, she had meticulously arranged the shelves, hunted for scarce editions, and chatted with patrons who valued the store's warmth. No one in her family, neither Vivian with her social aspirations nor her father, Richard, a reserved businessman weighed by stress, recognized the worth of her efforts. To them, the bookstore was merely a dusty corner of nostalgia, insignificant compared to Sophia's dazzling orbit. As sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating a small mirror near the counter, Emma caught a glimpse of her reflection. Her light brown hair was loosely tied back, her green eyes glinting with fatigue yet resolve. She often avoided mirrors, unwilling to face the painful resemblance to Sophia. The twins were mirror images, same eyes, same facial contours, but their lives were as different as day and night. A photo taped to the mirror's edge drew her gaze. Sophia, radiant with a perfect smile, her hair impeccably styled. The image was a stark reminder that, no matter how hard Emma tried, she was never the centerpiece of her family's story. The phone's chime shattered her thoughts. The screen flashed Vivian's name, and Emma took a deep breath, bracing for a tense conversation. She knew her mother would gush about Sophia's wedding, detailing lavish elements like floral arrangements or VIP guest lists, without a thought for Emma's life or the bookstore's finances. Every call from Vivian brought a list of tasks, a reminder that Emma's role in the family was to support, not to shine. She pressed answer, and Vivian's husky voice filled the air, brimming with excitement about wedding plans but devoid of any inquiry about Emma. When the call ended, Silence returned, broken only by the creak of the wooden floor beneath her steps. Emma turned to a stack of rare books on the counter, her fingers tracing their worn spines, trying to focus on work to dispel the sting of being overlooked. She carefully placed a vintage novel on display, reminding herself that the bookstore, however modest, provided a steady income and a place to belong. But then, a thick envelope, mistakenly delivered to the shop, caught her eye. Addressed to Vivian, its contents made Emma's heart lurch. A final notice for an overdue debt, the sum so staggering it stole her breath. The family's finances were far more precarious than anyone had revealed. Sophia's extravagant wedding wasn't just a social event, it was a lifeline to keep the family from bankruptcy. That night, Emma sat in her small apartment above the bookstore, the warm glow of a lamp casting light on stacks of books lining the walls. This was her safest haven, a cocoon shielding her from the outside world. But that peace dissolved as she thought of the debt notice and Sophia's cryptic call the previous night. The phone buzzed again, Sophia's name lighting up the screen. Before Emma could respond, she heard only her sister's trembling breath. Then the line went dead. Fear surged within her. Sophia, always exuding proud confidence, had never sounded so panicked. Emma dialed back, but the silence of the voicemail only intensified her racing pulse. She rose, pacing the small room, clutching a pillow to her chest. The dark Chicago skyline outside her window mirrored the unease in her heart. Her thoughts spiraled, tangled with the debt notice and Sophia's desperate voice. Was her sister in danger, or had something tied to the wedding driven her to flee? Emma couldn't shake the sense that everything was crumbling, and she, against her will, was about to be pulled into the storm's heart. One question echoed in her mind. What had happened to Sophia, and why was she so terrified? The next morning, Emma stood behind the bookstore counter, her eyes weary from a near sleepless night. She hadn't reached Sophia, and every phone chime startled her. The shop's door swung open, ushering in a chill autumn breeze. Vivian stormed in, her usual elegance overshadowed by panic. Her eyes were wild, her blonde hair disheveled, her voice quivering as she delivered shattering news. Sophia had vanished, leaving an empty room at the Lake Forest mansion, with only a scribbled apology pinned to a blanket. The wedding was days away, and no one knew where she was. Emma felt her heart sink, the memory of Sophia's brief call flashing vividly. She gripped her mother's hand, seeking answers, but Vivian only shook her head, tears smearing her flawless mascara. Richard, her father, entered moments later, looking older than his years, dark circles under his eyes, shoulders slumped. He confirmed Emma's suspicions. The family teetered on the brink of ruin, and Sophia's wedding to William was their last hope, anchored by his vast wealth. But with Sophia gone, everything seemed lost. The world tilted beneath Emma's feet. She longed to flee, to retreat to the safety of her books, but her parents' desperate gazes held her fast. Vivian, her voice trembling yet resolute, made a chilling proposal. Emma, identical to Sophia, must impersonate her sister, stepping into the wedding to deceive William, who couldn't see the difference due to his blindness. The idea horrified Emma. It wasn't just deceit, but a profound betrayal of an innocent man. Yet seeing her parents' anguished faces, she realized they had no other choice. The bookstore, her family, everything she cherished hung in the balance. With a heavy heart, Emma felt herself pushed onto a path with no escape, where truth and morality bowed to survival. Rain fell steadily on the streets of Chicago, casting a gray veil over Golden Page's bookstore. Emma Harper sat huddled in the small apartment above the shop, the faint glow of a yellow lamp illuminating stacks of books piled along the walls. The night was late, but sleep felt unreachable, her mind haunted by worries about the bookstore and the relentless pressure from her family. The phone buzzed, shattering the stillness, its screen blazing with Sophia's name. Before Emma could speak, her sister's panicked voice rang out, trembling like a cold wind. Then the line abruptly cut off. Emma's heart pounded, a wave of unease surging within her. She called back, only to hear the voicemail, Sophia's usual confident tone now heightening her anxiety. Clutching a pillow tightly, Emma stared out the window where raindrops streaked the glass, wondering if her sister, who always shone like the sun, was in danger. The next morning, pale sunlight filtered through the bookstore's windows, but it couldn't dispel the heavy atmosphere. Emma stood behind the counter, her eyes weary from a sleepless night, her hands absently arranging a stack of antique books. The door's bell chimed, and Vivian Harper burst in, her usual elegance replaced by panic. Her blonde hair was disheveled, her eyes glistening with tears, her voice quivering as she announced devastating news. Sophia had vanished. She'd left an empty room in the family's Lake Forest mansion, with only a scribbled apology pinned to a blanket and her lavish wedding dress abandoned. The wedding to William Langley, which Vivian called the event of the season, was days away, and Sophia's absence threatened to unravel everything. Emma felt the floor tilt beneath her. The memory of Sophia's desperate call the previous night flashed vividly, her voice unlike the confident persona she projected on social media. Stepping from behind the counter, Emma grasped her mother's hand, searching for answers, but Vivian only shook her head, tears smearing her flawless makeup. At that moment, Richard Harper, her father, entered, his haggard face that of a man crushed by burdens. At 60, he looked older than ever, dark circles etching sleepless nights. His shoulders slumped in a tailored coat. He scanned the bookstore, as if hoping Sophia would emerge from behind a shelf, but only silence answered. In the small room behind the counter, where Emma often catalogued books, the Harper family confronted a painful truth. Richard, his voice low and grave, revealed the secret they'd hidden. The family was drowning in debt from failed investments. Risky real estate deals and stock ventures had pushed them to the brink of bankruptcy, and the Lake Forest mansion, a symbol of wealth, was now a hollow facade. Sophia's wedding to William, a millionaire and former tech prodigy who lost his sight in a car accident 3 years prior, was not just a celebration, but their only financial lifeline. William's vast fortune and elite connections were the buoy to keep the family afloat. Emma listened, her heart heavy. She recalled the overdue debt notice she'd stumbled upon, its staggering sum stealing her breath. But Sophia's disappearance had turned hope to ashes. Vivian, her eyes flashing with desperation, gripped Emma's hand tightly, her voice trembling yet resolute. She made a chilling proposal. Emma, identical to Sophia, must impersonate her sister to complete the wedding. William, blind from his accident, wouldn't notice the difference. The wedding would proceed, the family's finances would be saved, and no one would need to know the truth. The idea pierced Emma like a dagger. She stepped back, her breath quickening, horror surging within her. Deceiving an innocent man, robbing him of his right to the truth, violated every value she held dear. She thought of William, known to her only through articles and her mother's tales, a brilliant CEO, now reclusive, navigating the world through memory and assistance. He deserved honesty, not a staged deception born of desperation. But as she looked at Richard's gaunt face and Vivian's pleading eyes, Emma felt the crushing weight of family duty on her shoulders. She turned away, running her hand along a bookshelf, seeking solace in the familiar scent of old paper. But even the bookstore couldn't shield her from reality. Vivian approached, resting a hand on her shoulder, her voice softer but still laced with urgency. She reminded Emma of the consequences if the wedding failed. The mansion would be foreclosed. The bookstore, her only refuge, would close, and the family would plunge into ruin. Richard, standing silently by the fireplace, added that their creditors were unforgiving. Vague threats from former business partners made him fear not just for their finances, but for the family's safety. Emma's heart felt torn in two. Part of her wanted to scream, to refuse this deceitful path, to flee to her books and simple life. But the image of the bookstore shuddered, her parents losing everything, and the memory of Sophia's panicked voice held her back. She thought of her sister, who lived in the spotlight but might now be lost somewhere, needing help. If Emma didn't act, the family would collapse, and she, however unwillingly, would witness it all. Vivian, Sensing her daughter's wavering, squeezed her hand, her eyes glinting with fragile hope. She promised this was temporary, that they'd find Sophia and everything would return to normal. But Emma knew there was nothing normal about impersonating someone else, especially in a marriage. She closed her eyes, fighting back tears, feeling as if she stood at the edge of an abyss. The bookstore, with its familiar shelves and creaking wooden floor, seemed the only world she truly understood. But now, it too teetered on the brink, and Emma realized she couldn't turn her back on her family, even if the cost was her own conscience. She took a deep breath, opened her eyes, her gaze falling on Sophia's photo taped to the mirror. Her sister's radiant, confident face was a reminder that Emma was about to step into a role that wasn't hers. Vivian and Richard stood silently, awaiting her decision. Emma's breath grew heavy, each heartbeat a warning. She knew that agreeing meant entering a path of lies, where a single misstep could destroy everything. But her parents' pleading eyes, the memory of the debt notice, and her worry for Sophia locked her in an invisible cage. With a faint nod, Emma agreed, though her heart screamed in protest. She didn't know William Langley, but she'd heard of his loneliness, how he rebuilt his life after the accident. The thought of deceiving him made her nauseous, but she told herself it was temporary, that Sophia would return, and she could retreat without causing harm. Yet deep down, Emma sensed a terrifying truth. Once she entered this game, there was no turning back. The bookstore's door creaked as Vivian and Richard left, leaving Emma alone with her decision. She stood still, her hand gliding over the wooden counter, feeling as if she were bidding farewell to herself, preparing to don Sophia's guise and step into a world where she didn't belong. Morning sunlight streamed through the high windows of the suite at the Peninsula Chicago, setting flecks of dust aglow in the air. Emma Harper stood rigid before a large, gold-framed mirror, her heart pounding as if it might burst from her chest. The reflection staring back was no longer her, the unassuming woman with loosely tied hair and eyes weary from nights fretting over her bookstore. Instead, she saw a stranger, light brown hair styled in intricate waves, shimmering under the chandelier's glow, delicate makeup concealing the faint scar on her chin, and Sophia's form-fitting dress, its bold cut and silken fabric clinging to her body, making her feel like an actor lost on a stage not her own. Every detail, from false lashes sharpening her green eyes to the high heels that made her wobble, was a stark reminder that she was living inside her sister's guise. Vivian Harper, with meticulously manicured hands, circled Emma like a fastidious director. She tugged at her hair, pinning waves into place, muttering instructions about posture, the radiant smile Sophia always flashed, and the lively voice she projected on social media. Vivian's tone, though meant to reassure, carried a sharp edge of tension, as if each minor misstep by Emma could shatter their fragile plan. Scattered across the room's plush carpet were swatches of fabric, sample bouquets, and garment bags holding the wedding dress, creating a scene of chaotic opulence. Sophia Lawson, the event planner in a sleek black blazer with her hair swept into a high bun, glided by, tablet in hand, tapping furiously to check the final list. Her keen eyes flicked toward Emma, sensing her unease, but she quickly turned away, engrossed in the pressing schedule. Emma felt like a child playing dress-up, each step in the towering heels a precarious challenge. She dreaded being exposed, especially by Charlotte Bennett, William Langley's loyal assistant, known to understand him better than anyone. Charlotte, with her short gray hair and piercing gaze, could spot a discrepancy in an instant, and the thought twisted Emma's stomach into knots. Vivian, sensing her daughter's hesitation, paused to lock eyes with her, her gaze both pleading and commanding. She reminded Emma that the family teetered on the brink, that the bookstore, her sole refuge, would vanish if the wedding failed. Her words, though gentle, cut like a blade, slicing into Emma's conscience, leaving no room for retreat. Leaving the hotel, Emma sat in the glossy black limousine, her eyes fixed on the white rose bouquet in her hands. Chicago's skyline flashed by outside the window, its towering buildings glinting in the sun, but she felt only a storm brewing within her. The wedding, hailed by Vivian as the event of the season, was no mere ceremony but a meticulously staged play, with Emma as its reluctant star. She tried to focus on her mother's directives. Move like Sophia, smile like Sophia, speak with Sophia's confidence. But guilt disrupted every thought. She was about to deceive a man, robbing him of his right to the truth, all for debts she didn't create. The holy name cathedral loomed ahead, its soaring arches and stained glass windows a symbol of solemnity Emma felt unworthy of. Stepping from the car, her father Richard's arm steadied her, guiding her through the entrance. He appeared composed in his formal attire, but Emma sensed the tremor in his grip, as if he too grappled with the weight of their deception. The crowd of elegantly dressed guests filled the pews, their eyes locking onto her, making her feel like prey under a spotlight. The organ's notes swelled, each chord a pulse reminding her there was no turning back. Emma walked down the aisle, her satin heels clicking on the marble floor, the bouquet trembling in her hands, threatening to crush its delicate petals. Her gaze settled on William Langley at the altar, tall and broad-shouldered in a tailored black suit. His dark hair was neatly combed, silver threads at his temples lending a distinguished air tinged with solitude. His blue eyes, once vivid as described in magazines, now gazed upward, unfocused, a testament to the world he could no longer see. As she drew near, William tilted his head, sensing her presence through her footsteps and breath. He extended his hand, a gentle yet profound gesture, and Emma, her heart heavy, placed her hand in his. The sincerity in William's touch stole her breath. She tried to maintain Sophia's confident poise, but her pulse raced so fiercely she feared he'd hear it. The officiant, with a warm smile, began the ceremony, but the words drifted past Emma like mist. Time seemed to slow as she recited the vows, the phrases ringing hollow on her tongue. To have and to hold, in sickness and in health. Each promise was a stab at her conscience, a reminder that she was building a future on lies. She felt as if she were floating, watching herself from afar, a character in a play she hadn't chosen. When the officiant declared William could kiss the bride, Emma's heart froze. William turned toward her, his hand gently finding her cheek, his fingers tracing with the care of touching a masterpiece. He leaned down, their lips meeting in a soft kiss, so tender it stirred both awe and agony within her. In that moment, she felt his sincerity, a man placing faith in the woman he believed was his destiny. But the truth, like a dark shadow, weighed on her. She wasn't Sophia, and this kiss, however sweet, was a lie. Applause erupted from the pews, snapping Emma back to reality. She clung to William's arm, facing the crowd, a forced smile masking the tempest inside. Cameras flashed, capturing a union built on deceit. In the front row, Vivian beamed, blinking back tears, while Richard exhaled in quiet relief, as if a burden had lifted. Emma, in Sophia's resplendent wedding gown, felt like an imposter amid the ceremony's radiance. As they stepped outside, cheers and camera clicks rose like a storm. A black limousine waited to whisk them to the reception, and William, ever gallant, helped her inside. Emma sat silently, staring through the tinted window, guilt a sharp blade in her chest. She had survived the ceremony, but each passing second drew her deeper into the lie. William sat beside her, quiet yet close, and she wondered if he sensed her tension. She gripped the bouquet, its white petals now slightly crumpled, a symbol of the fragility of the charade she played. As the car pulled away from the cathedral, Emma gazed at Chicago's skyline, where sunlight faded behind skyscrapers. She knew that as the false bride, she had entered a world with no easy escape. William, with his trust and sincerity, was someone she didn't want to hurt, but the truth, sooner or later, would find a way to erupt. In that moment, Emma could only pray she'd find the strength to face the consequences, though they might destroy everything she held dear. As the sun dipped below the horizon over Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, William Langley's magnificent mansion emerged like a flawless painting, its Victorian turrets rising tall amid ancient pines. The massive iron gates swung open, and Emma Harper, still reeling from the gleaming wedding ring on her finger, stepped into a world both resplendent and isolated. The house, with its wide verandas and stained glass windows, exuded a majestic yet chilling grandeur, as if guarding its own secrets. Emma, now bearing the title of Mrs. Langley, sensed a strange kinship between this place and her own heart, a blend of dazzling facade and deep-seated unease. Charlotte Bennett, William's longtime assistant, greeted Emma at the foot of the grand staircase, her short gray hair and sharp eyes framed by glasses. Charlotte's polite smile couldn't mask her reserve, as if she were silently assessing the woman newly entwined in her employer's life. Emma clutched her overnight bag, her heart racing at the thought that a single careless moment could lead Charlotte to realize she wasn't Sophia. She forced a smile in return, but Charlotte's keen, inscrutable gaze made her feel as if she were walking a tightrope, poised to snap at any second. The mansion, with its marble-floored foyer shimmering under chandelier light, was a labyrinth of opulence. Emma moved through wide corridors where oil paintings and Persian rugs told the story of a wealthy but distant family. William, though unable to see the home's splendor, navigated with astonishing confidence, relying on memory and subtle adaptations crafted for his life. Door handles bore braille markings, extra railings lined the halls, and a smart home system responded to his voice, testaments to his resilient adaptation since the accident that stole his sight 3 years ago. Guiding Emma through the foyer, he quietly shared that he cherished the tranquility of the lakeside home, where the gentle lapping of waves against the shore was his only solace for loneliness. His words, simple yet profound, sparked a flicker of empathy in Emma, but deepened the guilt of the deception she upheld. Emma was led to the mansion's library, a vast space with floor-to-ceiling shelves accessible by a rolling ladder. The scent of old paper and leather bindings welcomed her like a long-lost friend, evoking her Golden Pages bookstore in Chicago. Her fingers grazed the spines of rare volumes, first editions of Dickens, scarce poetry collections, feeling as if she'd rediscovered a piece of herself amid the storm of lies. Eleanor Simmons, the sturdy housekeeper with silver hair, explained that the library was once William's favorite retreat before he lost his sight. Now he maintained the collection with audiobooks and braille, determined to keep reading an inseparable part of his life. Eleanor's reverent words revealed to Emma that William, though living in darkness, still sought connection through books, a shared passion she hadn't anticipated. In her first days at the mansion, Emma strove to embody Sophia, mimicking her sister's confidence and captivating charm. She learned to move with a smoother gait, speak with a vibrant tone, and smile brightly, though each smile carried the weight of a mask. William, though blind, seemed to sense her through small details, the sound of her footsteps, the rhythm of her breath, or the accidental brush of her hand when passing a teacup. Those fleeting moments brought an unexpected intimacy, stirring both longing and fear in Emma. She knew every gesture, every word, was part of the charade she was compelled to play, yet her heart wavered under William's sincerity. One evening, as moonlight glimmered on the lake, William led Emma back to the library, where a brass floor lamp cast a warm golden glow. He settled into a leather armchair, hands lightly clasped, and asked her to read to him. Emma, caught off guard, felt a surge of emotion. Reading was her instinct, her way of connecting with the world, but Sophia, whose life revolved around spotlights and lavish parties, never shared this passion. She chose a collection of American romantic poetry, verses she'd loved since college, and began to read, her voice softly resonating in the quiet space. William closed his eyes, a faint smile crossing his lips, as if immersed in every word. That moment, bathed in gentle light and the distant sound of lake waves, forged a fragile bond between them, like two lost souls finding each other in the dark. Yet each intimate moment was overshadowed by the truth Emma concealed. She knew she wasn't Sophia, that William's smiles and trust were meant for a woman who didn't exist in that room. Guilt loomed like a shadow, seeping into every thought, preventing her from fully embracing the closeness they were building. She thought of her family, of the debts threatening to seize her bookstore and the Lake Forest mansion. Vivian's frequent calls reminded her that time was running out, that she needed to persuade William to provide financial aid to save the Harpers. Each call was a warning that this deception wasn't just a sham wedding, but a long-term scheme to ensure her family's survival. Emma tried to keep her distance from William, fearing closeness would unravel her resolve, but he seemed to sense her tension. During formal dinners, as crystal gleamed on the table, he gently asked about her mood, his warm voice filled with concern. Emma responded with vague replies, mimicking Sophia's carefree air, but her heart ached each time he smiled back. She realized that William, though dwelling in darkness, could see through the emotions she tried to hide. His sincerity, the loneliness he never voiced, made her want to flee and stay all at once, to shield him from the cruel truth she carried. Life in the mansion, with its long corridors and lavish rooms, became a gilded prison for Emma. Each day, she walked a tightrope between deception and truth, struggling to maintain Sophia's facade while wrestling with her conscience. The library, with its familiar shelves, was her only safe haven, but even there, William's presence unsettled her. She ran her fingers over the books, longing for her Chicago bookstore where she was herself, not an imposter in another's life. Yet each time William entered, with his folding cane and gentle smile, she felt their bond deepen, a connection that terrified her. For when the truth emerged, it would shatter not only his trust, but her own heart. As night fell, Emma stood by the window of the lavish bedroom, gazing at the lake sparkling under the moon. She hugged herself, trying to quell the guilt gnawing at her soul. William, with his kindness and resilience, was someone she didn't want to hurt, but with each passing day, she sank deeper into the lie. She told herself it was temporary, that Sophia would return and she could retreat. But deep down, Emma knew there was no easy escape. The mansion, with its cold beauty and hidden secrets, was the stage for a play she couldn't stop performing. And each moment with William brought her closer to the day the truth would erupt, threatening to destroy everything. The days at the Lake Geneva mansion unfolded like a slow, perilous dance, each step of Emma Harper's laden with tension and guilt. Pale winter sunlight filtered through tall windows, illuminating the opulent yet cold corridors where she continued to play the role of Sophia, the twin sister she was forced to impersonate. The facade, once a temporary cloak, had become a crushing burden on her shoulders. Every forced smile, every phrase mimicking Sophia's confidence, felt like a small cut to her conscience, leaving invisible wounds she couldn't heal. Meanwhile, William Langley, the husband she deceived, grew into an undeniable presence, his kindness and sincerity stirring her heart in ways she hadn't foreseen. William, though dwelling in the darkness of his blindness, possessed an uncanny ability to sense the subtle details Emma tried to hide. During dinners under the gleam of crystal chandeliers, or when she read poetry to him in the cozy library, he noticed differences. The way she delighted in Whitman's romantic verses, her warm voice tinged with hesitation, didn't align with the Sophia he'd known, a Sophia consumed by the spotlight and social galas. He didn't voice it, but his unfocused eyes, though sightless, seemed to bore into her, as if searching for a truth he couldn't yet grasp. Those moments, when he offered a gentle smile or tilted his head to listen, filled Emma with both comfort and fear. She knew the closeness between them, however genuine, was built on a lie, and with each passing day, that foundation grew ever more fragile. Emma's strain intensified when she accompanied William to an ophthalmologist appointment in Chicago. In the sterile clinic, with its white walls and antiseptic scent, she sat silently, clutching her bag, as Dr. Maxwell Grant, a white-bearded man with a reassuring voice, discussed an experimental surgery. He explained that the procedure, though risky, could restore part of William's vision, enough to discern shapes, colors, perhaps even the faces of loved ones. William, his expression pensive, weighed the chance to see the world again, if only partially. But for Emma, the news struck like lightning. If William could see, he'd realize she wasn't Sophia. The image of her face, with its faint chin scar and eyes lacking her sister's confidence, loomed vividly in her mind, sparking panic. She fought to keep her composure, but her heart raced, as if fleeing an approaching storm. Back at the mansion, family pressure suffocated Emma further. Vivian, her mother, called with increasing frequency and urgency, her voice icy over the phone, pressing Emma to convince William to transfer funds to settle the crushing debts weighing on the Harpers. Vivian reminded her of Golden Page's bookstore, her haven, now at risk of closing if they didn't soon appease creditors. Richard, her father, rarely called, but when he did, his low voice carried desperation, hinting at threats from former business associates. Their every word was a reminder that Emma wasn't just saving her family, but safeguarding her own life. Yet the thought of exploiting William, who trusted her, made her nauseous. She yearned to flee, to return to her familiar Chicago shelves, but the invisible tether of family duty held her fast. The emotional tempest peaked when a thick envelope arrived at the mansion, addressed to William in Sophia's flowing script. Emma, sorting mail in the marble-floored foyer, felt the blood drain from her face as she recognized the handwriting. She furtively opened the envelope, her heart pounding, and read the brief but dangerous lines. A vague farewell where Sophia apologized for leaving and hoped William would understand. The letter didn't expose Emma's impersonation, but its mere existence was a ticking bomb. If William read it, he'd question Sophia's absence and Emma's presence. In a panic, Emma rushed to the seldom-used drawing room's fireplace, her trembling hands striking a match. The flames devoured the letter, reducing Sophia's words to ashes, but Emma's fleeting relief gave way to guilt. She stood frozen, watching the embers fall, realizing each action sank her deeper into a quagmire of deceit. Every day in the mansion, Emma felt like an actor trapped in an inescapable role. She strove to maintain Sophia's persona, mimicking her sister's laugh and speech, but moments with William shook her resolve. In the library, as she read to him, her voice quivered with emotion, not just from the poetry, but from the sincerity in his listening. In the kitchen, as they cooked a simple meal together, he chopped garlic with care, his fingertips grazing the blade with a focus that made her smile. Those small moments brought a familiarity she'd never known, as if she were living a life where she truly belonged. But each time William touched her hand or called her Sophia in his warm voice, she was yanked back to reality, where the truth lurked like a shadow. She began to realize her heart was betraying her. William's sincerity, his quiet sharing of lonely days post-accident, or his fragile hope for the surgery, moved her deeply. He wasn't the cold millionaire she'd imagined, but a resilient man rebuilding from ruins, and his trust in her both touched and pained her. She longed to be honest, to tell him she was Emma, that she loved old books and quiet evenings, that she wasn't the perfect woman he believed. But each time she tried to speak, images of her family, the Lake Forest mansion, the bookstore, the debts, rose up, locking her confession in her throat. Life in the mansion became a series of contrasts, warm moments with William intertwined with dread of discovery. Emma felt like she walked a thin wire, one side holding the deepening bond with William, the other the truth that could destroy it all. She often stood by the bedroom window, gazing at the shimmering lake, wondering how long she could sustain the ruse. Charlotte, with her sharp eyes, seemed to watch her constantly, and each encounter made Emma feel exposed. Vivian's relentless calls warned that time was running out, that she must act swiftly to secure William's financial aid. Each night, as moonlight spilled through the window, Emma lay in the lavish bed, eyes wide, unable to sleep. She thought of the burned letter, Sophia's words now dust, and wondered where her sister was, if she was safe. But above all, she thought of William, his smile, the way he held her hand as if she were the only person in the world. She knew she was falling in love with him, not as Sophia, but as Emma, and that terrified her more than anything. For when the truth emerged, as she knew it inevitably would, she'd lose not only William's trust but her own heart. Night descended over Lake Geneva, carrying the chilling breath of an approaching storm. Flashes of lightning flickered on the horizon, illuminating William Langley's majestic mansion, where Emma Harper lived on the fragile line between deception and truth. Each passing day, she felt the mask of Sophia, the twin sister she impersonated, grow heavier, like armor constricting her chest. Moments with William, quiet evenings reading poetry in the library, Simple meals shared in the warm kitchen stirred her heart, but also filled her with dread. She knew the feelings blossoming between them, however genuine, were built on a lie, and every intimate second drew her closer to the day the truth would erupt. As moonlight pierced the window, Emma stood alone in the small upstairs parlor, arms wrapped around herself, struggling to quell the sense that everything was about to collapse. That morning, a leaden gray sky draped the mansion in gloom, mirroring Emma's mood. She descended the grand staircase, her hand gliding lightly over the intricately carved railing, when the front door burst open, ushering in a cold gust and a panicked voice. Richard Harper, her father, stumbled in, his coat askew, silver hair disheveled, and eyes red with strain. But what stopped Emma's heart was the figure behind him. Sophia, her sister, who had vanished before the wedding, now standing there, disheveled and weary. Sophia, once the epitome of perfection with her golden hair and radiant social media smile, wore an oversized sweater and frayed jeans. Dark circles under her green eyes, identical to Emma's, betrayed sleepless nights, and her hands clutched a small suitcase, nails chipped, face taut with tension. Most shocking was the slight swell of her belly, a sign of early pregnancy. Emma froze on the final step, her breath catching. Sophia's return, though once prayed for, now felt like a razor-sharp blade. She moved forward, her steps heavy, eyes locked on her sister. Sophia, her expression a mix of defiance and pain, scanned the lavish foyer, then paused at the glinting wedding ring on Emma's hand. A flicker of bitterness crossed her face, as if the reality that Emma had taken her place cut deeply. Richard, his voice trembling, tried to explain, but Emma sensed the desperation in his every word. He ushered Sophia into a nearby study, closing the door, leaving Emma alone in the foyer, her heart pounding as if it might shatter her chest. In the study, with high windows overlooking the lake, the air was thick with tension. Sophia, arms crossed, revealed her heart-rending story. She had fled with a man named Peter, whom she believed was her true love, only to find him unreliable. Bankrupt, pregnant, and exhausted, she returned hoping to reclaim her place, if only to secure a future for her unborn child. But Emma, now legally married to William, couldn't simply step aside. She stood silent, her gaze shifting between Sophia and Richard, feeling torn apart. Part of her was relieved to see her sister safe, but another part was horrified at the prospect of Sophia dismantling the carefully maintained facade. Richard, his face haggard, blamed Sophia for abandoning the family, but his words soon turned to despair, reminding them both that debt still threatened to strip away everything. The mansion, the bookstore, the Harper name. The argument escalated, Sophia's voice sharp, yet quivering, accusing their parents of forcing her into a marriage she didn't want. Emma, striving to stay calm, felt a tempest of emotions rising. She wanted to scream, to flee the stifling room, but Sophia's anguished eyes and Richard's desperation anchored her. She thought of William, his gentle smile, the way he held her hand as if she were his entire world. The idea that he might learn the truth, not from her but from Sophia, chilled her to the bone. But before she could speak, footsteps echoed in the hall and William's low, questioning voice cut through the tension. William appeared at the doorway, folding cane in hand, his face etched with confusion. He sensed the heavy atmosphere, as if a stranger's presence had disrupted the mansion's calm. Emma panicked, her heart racing so fiercely she feared he'd hear it. She hurried to him, gently touching his arm, trying to lead him away from the room where Sophia and Richard argued. She signaled for her father to take Sophia out of sight, and Richard, equally frantic, quickly guided her sister to a secluded corner of the mansion. Emma, with a strained smile, led William to the parlor, her voice shaky as she explained that her father had come to discuss an urgent family matter. William, though sightless, tilted his head, as if dissecting every sound, every nuance in her tone. His perceptiveness terrified her, but she held her composure, guiding him to an armchair and sitting beside him, hoping he wouldn't probe further. In that private moment, under the chandelier's dim glow, Emma felt the truth like a blade at her throat. She looked at William, his face still bearing its familiar sincerity, and nearly spilled everything. that she was Emma, that Sophia had fled, that their marriage was a lie. The confession trembled on her lips, but before she could speak, William's phone buzzed, shattering the fragile moment. Charlotte's urgent voice came through the speaker, announcing an emergency meeting for the charitable foundation. William sighed, reluctantly rising to answer. And Emma, both relieved and devastated, felt the chance to reveal the truth slip away. She stood, moving to the window, gazing at the lake where lightning flared, reflecting the chaos within her. The storm outside, with its rumbling thunder, seemed a warning that she could no longer delay the truth. Sophia's return had shaken the foundation of the ruse, and Emma thought of the letter she'd burned, Sophia's words now mere ashes, wondering if her sister planned to confront William. The thought froze her, for if Sophia revealed the truth first, William's trust would shatter, and Emma, though unwillingly, would bear the blame for his pain. When William returned, his face showed concern, but he still took her hand, as if to comfort them both. Emma squeezed his hand, feeling the cool metal of the wedding ring, and managed a faint smile. She knew this tender moment was fleeting. Sophia's reappearance had destabilized the deception, and Emma felt as if she stood on the edge of a volcano ready to erupt. She looked out the window, where the storm grew fiercer, and realized her time was running out. The truth, however painful, was rushing toward them like an unstoppable wave, and Emma, with a heavy heart, knew she had to find a way to face it before everything was swept away. The faint morning sunlight of Chicago glimmered across the skyscrapers, but in Emma Harper's heart, there was only darkness. She stood by the window of William Langley's luxurious penthouse, gazing at the urban skyline, feeling as if the entire world were tilting beneath her. Weeks spent cloaked in the identity of Sophia, her twin sister, had thrust her into a labyrinth of lies, where every moment with William, those poetry-filled evenings, his tender smiles, cut deeply into her conscience like a knife. Sophia's sudden return, along with the family's secrets and pressures, had made Emma realize she could no longer live within this deception. Today, after William's charitable foundation meeting, she resolved to face the truth, though she knew it could shatter everything she held dear. The drive from the Lake Geneva mansion to Chicago unfolded in tense silence. Emma sat beside William in the sleek black SUV, her hands gripping her bag, her eyes avoiding his face. William, in a navy suit with silver-flecked dark hair, exuded his familiar calm, but she sensed the anxiety beneath his upright posture. He took her hand, as if to reassure her, but the touch only tightened the knot in her chest. She knew that after today, he might never want to touch her again. As they reached the high-rise housing the foundation, Emma tried to focus on presentations about literacy programs, but the adrenaline coursing through her veins left her consumed by the impending confession. The meeting passed in a whirlwind of charts, funding pledges, and fervent applause. William, with his sharp intellect and dedication, led the discussions, leaving Emma in awe of his strength despite his blindness. As the crowd dispersed, she approached him, brushing his arm lightly, feeling his familiar warmth. He smiled, exhaling in relief at securing resources for the next program phase, but his sightless eyes seemed to search for something in her silence. Emma, her heart heavy, suggested returning to the penthouse to talk, and William, though wary, nodded in agreement. In the elevator to the penthouse, the air was thick, like the calm before a storm. Emma's breaths grew shallow, each ding of the elevator a countdown to the fateful moment. When the penthouse door closed, she guided William to the soft leather sofa, light from the wide windows casting stark lines across his chiseled face. She knelt beside him, taking his hand, feeling the calluses from days he once gripped a steering wheel before his accident. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she drew a trembling breath, preparing to utter words that would change everything. In a choked voice, Emma confessed she wasn't Sophia. She was Emma Harper, the twin sister, coerced into impersonating her to save their family from debt. She spoke of failed investments, the overdue debt notice, and Sophia's disappearance before the wedding. Each word was a wound, but she pressed on, letting the truth pour out like a river breaching a dam. She admitted the guilt of deceiving him, yet insisted the moments they shared, library evenings, shared meals, were real, the truest parts of her. Her tears fell, her voice breaking, but she continued, pleading for him to understand she never meant to hurt him. William sat motionless, his face contorted with shock and pain. His hands, once clasped tightly around hers, jerked away as if burned, and his sightless eyes, though unseeing, seemed to pierce her with profound hurt. He stood, staggering, his folding cane clattering to the floor, his voice hoarse with anger as he ordered her to leave. The words, cold and laden with anguish, stabbed like a dagger into Emma's heart. She reached for him, desperate to explain, to beg, but he turned away, his shoulders trembling with rage and betrayal. Emma, her heart shattered, gathered her bag and phone, stepping out of the penthouse, the elevator doors closing behind her like a final curtain on her hopes. Outside, Chicago's night wind sliced through her, stinging her tear-soaked cheeks. Emma stumbled to a bench near the building's entrance, her body shaking with cold and grief. She called Richard, her father, but his panicked voice only asked if she'd persuaded William to transfer funds. His desperation, blind to her pain, made her hang up, unable to bear more. She sat alone in the city she once called home, feeling as if the world had crumbled. William's anguished face, the way he recoiled from her, haunted her like a specter, and she knew she'd destroyed the trust of the man she loved, not as Sophia, but as herself. Emma returned to Lake Forest, retreating to her childhood room in the Harper mansion, where floral wallpaper and old furniture held memories of a carefree past. Now the room was a prison of pain and guilt. Vivian, her mother, avoided eye contact, her gaze filled with anger at the plan's failure. Richard vanished for hours, likely negotiating with creditors, leaving Emma alone with her swirling thoughts. She thought of William, how he'd postponed the experimental surgery, a glimmer of hope to restore his sight, because of her betrayal. The realization that she'd stolen that chance choked her, tears spilling silently onto her pillow. The Golden Pages bookstore became Emma's only refuge, but even it bore the marks of fragility. She rearranged shelves, dusted ancient books, but each action was mechanical, devoid of the joy it once held. Her staff, noticing her sunken eyes and forced smiles, kept their distance, afraid to ask. Standing behind the counter, Emma ran her hand over the worn oak, feeling as if she were clinging to a fragment of her old life. But the overdue debt notice, still haunting her from before the wedding, was a reminder that the bookstore, like her family, teetered on the edge. If creditors acted, this sanctuary would vanish, leaving her with nothing but pain and regret. Each night, Emma lay on the narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, William's face vivid in her mind. She recalled his smile, the way he held her hand, his stories of lonely days after the accident. Those moments, though real, were now mere memories of a lie. She wondered if he'd ever forgive her, or if he'd forever see her as a betrayer. The truth, though spoken, brought no relief as she'd hoped. Instead, it left a gaping wound, where the love she felt for William was now just a shattered dream. She thought of Sophia, of the child her sister carried, and wondered if she could mend her family's fractures. But above all, she thought of William, his sightless yet wounded gaze, and realized she'd lost not only him, but a part of herself. The bookstore, with its familiar shelves, was the last place she felt safe, but even it couldn't shield her from the storm she'd unleashed. Emma closed her eyes, tears streaming down, knowing that the truth, though necessary, had destroyed everything she cherished, and the path ahead was now a dark, uncharted void. The days following Emma Harper's heart-wrenching confession in the Chicago penthouse drifted by like a somber dream. Back in Lake Forest, she retreated to her childhood room in the Harper mansion, where faded floral wallpaper and the faint scent of wood held memories of a carefree past, now mere shadows of devastation. Each night, William Langley's anguished face haunted her, his sightless eyes brimming with hurt, his hand pulling away as if she were a flame. She had shattered his trust, and the pain was a sharp blade, slicing deep into her heart. Golden Pages, bookstore, once her solace, became her final refuge, But even its familiar shelves carried the fragile breath of uncertainty, as family debts threatened to strip everything away. 2 weeks later, as pale winter sunlight filtered through the bookstore's windows, the door's bell chimed, pulling Emma from her reverie. Charlotte Bennett, William's steadfast assistant, stepped inside, her sharp composure softened by eyes heavy with concern. Dressed in a tailored gray coat, her short gray hair neatly trimmed, she spoke in a low voice, revealing that William was drowning in despair. He buried himself in work, canceled the experimental surgery to restore his sight, and refused to discuss anything beyond the charitable foundation. With rare sincerity, Charlotte urged Emma to confront him, to fully explain and give him a chance to grasp the truth. Her words, like a faint light in the darkness, sparked a fragile hope in Emma's heart, though she feared William would never want to see her again. Carrying a heavy heart and a whisper of hope, Emma arrived at Northwestern Memorial Hospital in Chicago, where William was preparing for the surgery he'd unexpectedly chosen to undergo. The early morning sky glowed with hues of orange and soft pink, but the hospital's cold air, thick with antiseptic and hurried footsteps, made her tremble. She found William in the waiting area, seated beside Charlotte, his face stern, shoulders rigid as if bracing for battle. When she softly called his name, he stiffened, turning toward her voice, his unseeing eyes flashing with anger. Though he coldly rebuffed her, Emma waited patiently in the lounge, perched on a hard plastic chair, clutching a cold coffee, praying for the surgery's success. Each beep of a monitor, each nurse's step, tightened her chest, but she stayed, determined to be there for him, even in silence. The surgery stretched for hours, and when Dr. Maxwell Grant finally appeared, his weary smile brought joyful news. The procedure was a success, restoring part of William's vision. Emma exhaled, silent tears falling, relief mingling with fear. William could now see shapes, colors, perhaps her face. But would he want to look at her, the one who betrayed him? Charlotte led her to the recovery room, where William lay, bandages around his forehead, protective patches over his eyes. He stirred, his voice hoarse from anesthesia, and upon learning Emma was there, he fell silent, his face tense. Emma, her voice trembling, affirmed that her feelings were real, that their shared moments, poetry nights, simple meals, were her, not Sophia. William, still angry, asked for time, but didn't send her away, a faint spark of hope quickening her pulse. A week later, at the Lake Forest mansion, Emma and William faced the Harper family in a tense encounter. The vast parlor, with its crackling fireplace and ancestral portraits, became a stage for the truth to unfold. Vivian, her blonde hair impeccable but eyes anxious, stood beside Richard, who looked decades older. Sophia, pregnant and worn, stood near a window, her gaze wavering between defiance and remorse. Emma, beside William, felt his steady presence, though his folding cane reminded her of his limitations. She led the conversation, recounting the full deception. From Sophia's disappearance to the family's debt pressures, from her choice to impersonate to her agonizing confession. William, in a low voice, expressed his hurt, condemning the Harpers for stealing his choice. Though not forgiving immediately, he agreed to consider fair financial aid, not out of pity, but to ensure Emma could keep the bookstore he knew she cherished. Time passed, and a year later, Emma and William stood together in summer sunlight, gazing at Lake Geneva from the renovated mansion's veranda. Once cold corridors now warmed with fresh paint and new bookshelves, reflecting their transformed lives. Emma, no longer a false bride, had rediscovered herself, and William, with partial vision restored, learned to see the world through compassion's lens. They rebuilt the bookstore, renaming it Visions and Pages, a hub for braille and audiobooks, where all, regardless of sight, could find joy in literature. Emma, fueled by her love for rare books, led reading programs, while William, with his wealth and influence, backed literacy initiatives, making the bookstore a beacon of inclusion. In a quiet moment, William handed Emma a slim memoir, its cover etched with braille in print, "Seeing Twice." He wrote of his journey, losing sight, meeting Emma, and learning to see through the heart. Dedicated to her, the woman who taught him true vision transcends the eyes, the book moved Emma to tears, her fingers tracing the words. They stood together, no longer bound by lies, but by love and a shared mission. The bookstore, filled with laughter and stories, became a symbol of their journey of redemption and hope, a future built not just for themselves, but for those needing knowledge's light. Emma thought of her family, Sophia, now living quietly near Chicago, focused on her newborn, Vivian and Richard, slowly letting go of ambition to heal old wounds. But above all, she thought of William, how he chose forgiveness, not from weakness, but from compassion's strength. She recalled their early days in the mansion, when she feared the truth would destroy everything. And now, beside him, she saw that the truth, though painful, had set them free. Visions and Pages was more than a shop. It was proof of humanity's power to heal, forgive, and rebuild from ruins. As sunset bathed the lake in radiant gold, Emma held William's hand, feeling his warmth. They spoke little, but their silence brimmed with understanding. From a lie born of desperation, they had found each other, not through wealth's glare, but through authentic moments, pages of books, shared smiles, and common dreams. Their journey, steeped in pain and hope, was a testament to love's triumph over adversity, where truth, however brutal, opened the door to a future brighter than ever before.